The Market of the Silent Ones. In the village of Umu Oda, there was a man named Obinna. Obinna was a trader, but he was not just any trader. He was the kind of man who would sell water to a fish if he could. He loved money more than he loved his wife, his children, or his own peace of mind. If a bag of rice cost 2 cowries, Obinna would find a way to sell it for 10. The elders of Umu Oda often warned the young ones, "Do not be like Obinna, who looks at the sun and sees a gold coin." One evening, while drinking palm wine at the village square, Obinna heard a whisper between 2 old travelers. They spoke of the Oja Okunkun, the night market. "It opens only when the moon refuses to shine," one traveler. "They say the buyers there do not bargain. They pay whatever price you call. But you must never look them in the eye." Obinna did not hear the warning. He only heard, "They pay whatever price you call." Greed entered his heart like a worm enters a fruit. 2 nights later, the sky was pitch black. No moon, no stars. It was a darkness so thick you could almost taste it. The village was asleep, doors locked, windows shut against the heavy night air. But Obinna was awake. He loaded his wheelbarrow with his finest yams, the biggest tubers he had been saving. He walked towards the forbidden junction, where 3 roads met near the great Iroko tree. As he approached the junction, Obinna stopped. He expected the familiar roar of a market. He expected the chaotic symphony of women haggling, goats bleating, chickens crying, and metal clashing. But as he stepped into the clearing, the world went dead. There were hundreds of figures moving around, lit only by lanterns that gave off a pale, sickly blue light. But there was no sound. The only sound in the entire world was Obinna's sandals pressing into the loose sand. Even the crickets had ceased their song. The wind did not rustle the leaves of the Iroko tree. The silence was heavy, pressing against his eardrums like water deep in a river. He could hear the wet sound of his own tongue in his mouth. He could hear the thump, thump, thump of his own heart hitting his ribs. The figures moved smoothly, gliding like oil on water. No feet dragged on the earth. No cloth rustled. Obinna swallowed hard, the sound loud in the quiet air. "Good," he thought, shaking off the unease. "Let me make my money and leave." He set up his stall. A tall man approached immediately. The man wore a long white robe that looked ancient, stained with the red dust of the earth. He pointed a long grey finger at the biggest yam. Obinna's greed flared, overpowering his fear. He decided to be wicked. He called a price that was 5 times the normal value. 50 cowries, Obinna said. His voice sounded too loud, unnatural, like a gunshot in a library. In the village, any man would have shouted, "Thief! Are you crazy?" But the tall man did not argue. He did not speak. He simply reached into his robe and brought out a bag. He dropped it on the table. The sound of the money echoed unnaturally. Obinna was shaking with joy. He grabbed the money bag. It felt heavy, cold, and solid. He looked up to thank the customer, but then he froze. As the man turned to walk away, the unnatural stillness of the air was broken by a sudden, cold breeze. The white robe lifted slightly. The man's feet were not touching the ground. He was floating 2 inches above the sand. Obinna's mouth went dry. The silence suddenly felt predatory. He looked around at the other customers, really looking at them for the first time. A woman was buying fish nearby. As she inspected the fish, she turned her head to look at Obinna. Her body stayed facing forward, but her neck twisted 180 degrees, snapping all the way around to her back like an owl. A child was standing near the palm oil seller. The child had no face, just a smooth blank expanse of skin where eyes and a mouth should be. Cold fear washed over Obinna. This was not a market for the living. These were the ancestors, the spirits, and the wandering dead who were not at rest. He wanted to run, but his legs felt like heavy stone rooted to the spot. Suddenly, a cold hand touched his shoulder. The cold seeped through his shirt, freezing his skin. "You have sold your goods," a voice whispered right into his ear. It sounded like dry leaves crushing together in a dead forest. "Now, you must stay with us." Obinna turned slowly, his bones creaking. It was an old woman. She looked exactly like his grandmother, who had died 10 years ago. But her eyes were empty holes, dark as a well, leaking black smoke. "Grandmother," Obinna choked. "Dreed brought you here, my son," she said, her voice devoid of warmth. "The living trade in the day, the dead trade in the dark. You have taken our money. You belong to the night now." Obinna screamed. The sound tore through the silence. He threw the heavy bag of money at her. The bag burst open, but coins did not spill out. Instead, smooth grey gravestones and dead black beetles poured onto the sand, scurrying over his feet. He abandoned his wheelbarrow. He abandoned his precious yams. He turned and ran. He ran until his chest felt like it would explode. Behind him, the silence broke. He heard the wind rushing, sounding like 1,000 people whispering his name in unison. "Obinna, Obinna." He did not look back. He burst into his compound and crashed through his front door, collapsing on the floor, shivering with a fever that burned like fire. For 7 days and 7 nights, Obinna could not speak. He lay in bed, sweating, pointing at the corner of the room, screaming that the Silent Ones were waiting for him in the shadows. When he finally recovered, Obinna was a changed man. He burned his remaining goods. He stopped trading. He became a farmer who gave half his harvest to the poor widows of the village. And to this day, whenever the moon refuses to come out and the night is pitch black, Obinna locks his door, blows out his lamp, and covers his ears, because he knows that down at the junction, the Silent Ones are still buying, and the price they pay is your soul.